Hello, good afternoon, everyone. How are you doing? I hope you had a good weekend. Hope you rested well, and I hope you are staying safe. God will keep all of us by His grace, but we need to endeavor to keep to all the protocols that have been given to us by the government, by the World Health Organization. We know that we're going to come out of this clear on the other side, but just make sure you stick to the protocols. Now, my name is Dr. Ori. I'm your lifestyle medicine physician, and I'm passionate about getting people to make positive lifestyle changes to improve their health behavior and also to improve their health-related quality of life. And so why am I here? The reason is because I've been getting a lot of questions. People are asking a lot of questions. We had a program about 2 Fridays ago. That was our BYC, during which we get someone to share their personal life story or testimony to tell us how they made positive lifestyle changes and how this impacted on their general health. So now the last person who came up about 2 weeks ago talked about how he dropped certain things in his diet. One of the things he dropped was bread. He also dropped rice. And so I started getting questions. Does that mean we shouldn't eat rice anymore? We shouldn't eat bread anymore? He also talked about honey. And so I just wanted to make some clarifications so that we don't go away with confused messages. We don't want our messages to be ambivalent. We want you to know why some things might not be as good as the other. Not that they are not good really in themselves, but when you're trying to achieve your goal, you might need to sacrifice for a while and let go of something in order to achieve your goal. So now, today, I just want to talk to us briefly about glycemic index, because this goes to a large extent to determine why some foods might not be good for us at certain times and why some may be better. It will just determine why you're making a certain choice at a particular time. So now, when we talk about glycemic index, it tells us at what rate a certain food we're eating, at what rate it is entering our bloodstream. It tells you how fast it's hitting the bloodstream. That's what a glycemic index means. And all the foods that we eat, whether carbohydrates, protein, fruits, veggies, all of them have glycemic indices. Each of them has a glycemic index, the rate at which that food enters the bloodstream, because everything we eat enters our bloodstream as glucose. Now I'm going to be sharing some slides with us, just a few slides, just to show us the glycemic indexes or indices of foods. But now, when our speaker talked about wheat, he said he was taking wheat bread. First of all, one clarification, I want us to know that wheat is an important grain, which is used in virtually most products that you see. It's used for practically all the breads that you see. It's used in industries to make biscuits. That's what is used in making flour. And so you find wheat in practically everything. Even most of the cereals that you see, they're wheat based. But when we're talking about wheat bread, we actually should say wheat whole bread and not just wheat bread, because the white bread we're taking is also from wheat. So I'll rather say wheat whole bread and then wheat white bread. What's the difference between the two? One has been finely processed and the fiber has been stripped off, such that when you consume it, it enters your bloodstream very fast. Unlike your whole wheat bread, the processing is less than that of the white wheat bread, and so it enters your bloodstream more slowly. But I would like you to know that there is really not much of a difference between the two, even though the glycemic index of wheat whole bread is less than that of wheat white bread. I hope I'm not confusing you. But by the time I show you the slides that show the different glycemic indices of food, I think that would also clear your mind, because I got a lot of questions and I'm just trying to answer these questions in a simple way to capture some of what people need to hear. So that's about the glycemic index of bread with regards to wheat whole bread and wheat white bread. The reason why the glycemic index is important is because the higher the rate of the glycemic index of that food, then the higher the release of insulin into your bloodstream from the pancreas. So as soon as you eat, the pancreas begins to produce insulin. And insulin is like a growth hormone. The more of insulin your body produces, the more likely you're going to put on weight. And there are some other inflammatory markers that are released into your bloodstream that can also predispose you to having heart disease and some other problems. At the end of the day, when insulin is overproduced, it becomes resistant. It doesn't work quite as well as it would, and then people begin to develop what we call type 2 diabetes due to insulin resistance. So this is just a little explanation to clear up why you want to aim for more foods that have a lower glycemic index. So it's very important for us to understand this basis. Now let's move on to some other foods. We're talking about the glycemic index of foods. I'm going to share with us something now that shows you how well or how fast each of these foods go into our bloodstream. So here we are. I'm sure you can see this. So we can see a list of high carbohydrate foods. And when we say high carbohydrate, that means the glycemic index is close to 100. Well, usually above 50, between 50 and 100. But let's look at this chart here. So we have white wheat bread, like I mentioned earlier. I got this from the Harvard School of Medicine website. So white wheat bread, you can see the glycemic index is about 75 plus or minus 2. Whole wheat bread is 74. So you can see that the difference is not really much, but whole wheat is still lower than white wheat bread. Remember, it is the fiber that makes a difference. We have some other grain breads. Well, those might not be readily available depending on where bread is being made. So, but there are some that the grain has been made in such a way that the fiber is still there, blended with the fiber. The fiber is not removed. Now you can see some other things that we have here. We have white rice, boiled white rice. You can see that the glycemic index is close to bread. So if you are really struggling to lose weight, these are the high carbohydrate foods that cause insulin to be released quickly into your system. And remember, I said that insulin is like a growth hormone, which makes you to put on weight. Now, you can see brown rice. A lot of people don't like brown rice because they feel it's tasteless. But the reason why brown rice may be better, may be a better option is because the fiber is still retained to a larger extent compared with white rice, which is usually processed. You can see barley, sweet corn, spaghetti. When I tell people that you can take spaghetti, you can take pasta, they wonder, but you see that it has a lower glycemic index than bread, as well as rice itself. We have rice noodles. Well, I don't know how available that is here, but you can see that the glycemic index is much lower. Okay, let's look at the next chart. Fruits and fruit products. Yeah. So this is something interesting as well. You can see all these fruit products, right? Can you? apple, orange, banana. Look at the glycemic indices. For apple, it's 36. Of course, we're talking about raw apples now, because by the time you blend it, the glycemic index increases a little bit. And by the time you make it into a juice, it's even much higher. Watermelon has a higher glycemic index than apple. You can see banana. But you can see that these are much lower. And that's why when we're talking about meals, even taking your portions or meal portions, you should watch your portions, because if you sit down with 3 oranges, at the end of the day, you have taken what is equivalent to the portion of rice that would cause a glycemic index of about 74, like we saw earlier. So this apple juice that we're talking about here, we're not talking about the one that comes in a carton. We're talking about the one that is squeezed. So you can see the raw apple itself, a glycemic index of 36, but it goes a bit higher when you squeeze it into a juice, because you have removed the fiber. You remember that when you're eating an apple, there is fiber in it. You're chewing and chewing, so it takes time before it goes into your bloodstream. But the apple juice already blended it, and so it goes directly. But even then, the glycemic index is far lower when you compare it to what you find in some of the pet drinks. I think I have a chart on that. Look at the vegetables. I tell people that go for sweet potato. I don't know how many people eat sweet potato in our environment, but the glycemic index of sweet potato is much lower than that of the Irish potato. This is the Irish potato here, 78. Okay, let's look at the last charts. Okay, this is talking about sugars in general. So when we talk about fructose is the sugar that is found in fruits, and the body processes it much easily. But when we're talking about glucose, we find glucose in most of the foods that we eat, especially the drinks, the biscuits, and all that. You find glucose. And so the glycemic index of glucose in itself is about 103. So depending on the quantity of glucose that you have in whatever those packaged products are, this is what you're going to be getting. Then, he talked about honey too. He stopped taking honey. So honey, as sucrose in itself, is even sugar, yes. So that we don't get too confused. Sucrose is actually sugar. And then fructose is found in fruits. Then glucose is more, is processed. I'm sure that some of us have had to take this glucose D drink, maybe during exercise when we're exhausted. It's taken to boost the blood sugar. So actually that has a higher glycemic index. And I think this glucose is what is actually added to many of those packaged foods that we see. And if you look at the packaging at the back, usually they try to give the dietary information. Just check. It will tell you how much glucose is in it. So all these foods, generally, everything that we take has a glycemic index, but that index just tells you how fast that food enters your bloodstream. So I just wanted to clear that up, just for us to know that wheat bread, white bread, they're from the same product, they're from wheat. But the glycemic index of whole grain wheat bread is higher, is less, or yes, it's less compared with that of white bread, because white bread is from wheat as well. So thank you so much for listening to this short expose of mine, as I will say. Make sure that when you're choosing your meals, you go for things that have a lower glycemic index, and you watch your portion such that even if you have to take rice, you're not taking so much of a time at a time. You can take it with some vegetables that will also control the rate at which it enters your bloodstream. Take it with any kind of fiber. It could be with some beans, it could be with some vegetable. It will reduce the rate at which it enters your bloodstream. So till I come your way again, continue to choose life.